Good morning, friends. My name is Darren St. George, and welcome to another Sal St. George program. If you've been with us before, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to see you. If this is your first time, welcome to the party. This is how we start every week. Each Monday morning, we celebrate entertainment's leaders, legends, and icons, and this morning is no exception. Today, Sal is taking a virtual field trip to the Red Skelton Museum in Vincennes, Indiana. We are honored to be joined by Ann Platt and Mark Kratzner. Please be sure to keep your camera and microphone on mute throughout today's program. If you have any questions either on Zoom or Facebook, we want to hear them. Please add them into the chat and I'll be happy to relay your questions for you. Next week, Sal is celebrating the 4th of July by revisiting the making of Yankee Doodle Dandy, and we hope you will join us as well. As always, we have John Higgins behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly. And now, without further ado, let's get to the man of the hour. Sal, Dad, are you there? Good morning, Pop. I know your camera's turning on. How are you doing? There we go. Hey,
Good
Pop.
morning, everyone. It's Vincennes, Indiana.
Vincennes, Indiana. There you go.
Vincennes, and I'm glad to be back there again. Good morning, everybody. We have a little bit of housekeeping to do before we run off to the museum. Darren, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. First things first, I think some birthday wishes are in order. Happy birthday to the man of the hour.
95 years young today, Mel Brooks.
Wow. Incredible. And these are just a few images from his film career. Incredible. Very, very funny guy. And we also have an announcement. It hasn't been added to our website yet, but Dad just procured another virtual road trip for us. We are heading over to the Edward Hopper Museum.
Yes.
And that is
one of my favorite artists. I'm so excited to get there. It's going to be a very personal tour. From when I spoke with the people over there, the lovely people, they're going to tell us the real story behind all these great paintings.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are certainly magnificent works of art, and I can't wait to learn more about them. But I think that is it for housekeeping. Let's get on with the show. What do you say?
Oh, wait. I've got one or two things. I just want to thank a couple of people very quickly. Sometimes I truly feel like George Bailey. My guests have been so generous with me all the time. They knew about my house fire, and I lost all my wife and I lost everything. But my books were always important to me. This week, this is just one of a case of books that Robert brought me all the way from New Jersey. This is one of the books I lost. I also received this from Linda. In this one, I mean, these people, I can't thank you enough. They're helping me restore my library. I saw Gary and Phyllis. They gave me this book all about Diana Ross. And surprisingly, even my son has gotten involved. And here are two of the books that he got me, and I'm real excited about them. This one in particular, it's written by Madeline Pugh. It's called Laughing with Lucy. She was the writer with Bob Carroll that was with Lucy her entire career. And this is all the story about Desilu, the story about the studio itself. So thank you all. I just wanted to go out of my way and just tell everybody I truly appreciate your thoughtfulness. I can't thank you enough. Now we can take it away, Mr. Darren.
All right. That's great stuff, Pop. I'm really happy to see all that. Mark, Ann, are you there? Let's get started.
Here we are.
Good morning.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Red Skelton Performing Arts Center. We are out right now in the lobby of the Red Skelton Performing Arts Center on the campus of Vincennes University. And we're going to be walking down the hallway toward the Red Skelton Museum, which is connected to the Performing Arts Center. What's really cool about this place is it is right across the parking lot from the home where Red Skelton was born. He was born right across the street from here in a small home that is still standing in its original location. It's owned now by Vincennes University, but there's a large Indiana historical marker in front of it that tells the story of Red Skelton.
I love that sculpture you have behind you.
Yeah, isn't that cool? This was dedicated. The Performing Arts Center was completed in 2006, and this was created by a local sculptor, Matt Parmenter, and it is a bust of Red Skelton, and it just tells a little bit about him. And I have a photo here. You can kind of see a little bit about the Performing Arts Center. It's a beautiful theater, holds about 850 people. It's three balconies, two balconies, three levels, a European style theater. So it's a great asset. And we often host shows there, as well as the university and the community members. So the whole thing is a great tribute to Red Skelton.
And was Red around when this was being planned?
No. They came to the university in 1997 when Red Skelton passed away. The president of the university at the time, Dr. Philip Summers, went to the board of directors and said, I think we need to do a performing arts center and museum in honor of Red Skelton. Well, the board passed the measure immediately, but then it took time to raise the funds to first build the Performing Arts Center and then ultimately the Red Skelton Museum next to it. And we were able to open the museum in 2013 on what would have been Red Skelton's 100th birthday. So about 16 years after his death is when the museum opened. And
is his family involved at all?
His third widow, or his third wife, Lothian Skelton, is involved in that, not financially, but just in the fact that she sent all of Red's things to this museum. She said she felt it was very important that Red's legacy be continued here in his hometown. He was a guy that always spoke of his hometown. It was very important to him, his heritage here and being from the Midwest. And so she thought rather than doing his museum in Hollywood or in California or other places where he may have lived or traveled, right here in his hometown is where she wanted the museum. And so she has sent us most of our artifacts that we carry are from her.
Is Valentina still with us?
Valentina is still with us. She lives out in California as well, in the Palm Springs area, near where Lothian, Mrs. Skelton lives. Valentina is a bit reclusive. She doesn't travel much, but she's doing well, and she's living out there nearby to Lothian Skelton, and they are kind of partners together in the Red Skelton estate.
Okay, I won't interrupt you anymore.
No, you're fine. I love questions. I work well with questions, so you just keep them coming.
Yeah, Valentina is Red's daughter.
Yes. She is his daughter. He had Richard and Valentina, and Richard unfortunately passed away when he was about 10 years old of leukemia. And that's actually one part of the museum that we won't get into today because the situation with the museum is out here we have great Wi-Fi. In the front part of the museum, we have great Wi-Fi. But as we get into the back areas of the museum, it drops our Wi-Fi. So we'll kind of do an abbreviated tour of the museum. So I'm telling all your viewers right now, you need to get to Vincennes so you can see everything we have here. And one exciting thing every year we have is the Red Skelton Festival. And this is our 16th year for the Red Skelton Festival. And that will be taking place July 16th and 17th this year. And Mrs. Skelton will actually be here in town greeting our fans and saying hey to all the Red Skelton people who come here for the festival. And she likes to come every year. So that's a great time. Every year we host a festival on the weekend nearest to Red's birthday, which was July 18th. So something to think about.
And what does the festival consist of?
The festival, it kind of varies, but typically it's a festival. And that's one thing I wanted to mention about this theater. And Marco, if you'll pan up to see the ceiling here, and then back here to see these poles. When Red Skelton, he loved circus clowns, loved them, and clowns loved Red Skelton. And even at the height of his success, he had won Emmys, he had so many awards, so many accolades, TV star, movie star. Whenever he was introduced, he always wanted to be introduced as one of America's clowns because he felt like that was the highest form of comedy, was clowning and entertaining people. And that was really his goal, was to make people laugh. So when they designed this theater, they did it with a little nod to his heritage and his love of the circus. So those panels that you saw on the ceiling are designed to somewhat look like a circus tent. And then the poles coming around are like the poles in a circus tent. And it's the same way in the theater. The ceiling does that arch up and to the point like a circus tent, the ceiling panels, and then the poles in there as well. So it's kind of a subtle tribute to Red's love of clowning and circuses. But we're going past here some of Red's most iconic characters on large portraits here on the wall. We have Junior, the Mean Little Kid, George Appleby, henpecked husband, cauliflower McClung, punch-drunk boxer. Of course, here in the center, we have Red Skelton and a good buddy, Ed Wynn. I have a story for you a little later about Ed Wynn, which Mark will then debunk. So a lot about Ed Wynn. There's San Fernando Red, Quinn Cadiddlehopper, and Sheriff Deadeye. So these are some characters here in the foyer of the Performing Arts Center.
And I remember when we came and visited you 1 year ago, you were the very first road trip we ever experienced, and you were so kind to open that door for us. But I do remember after we finished with your tour back here, we all said we didn't realize how large the museum is. How many square feet?
Large.
Yeah.
And the Performing Arts Center is very large and very impressive. And you can see behind me, this is what we call our Vincent Exhibit, because it tells a little bit about Red's time here in Vincennes. And we have an exhibit open this right now called When Red Was Richard that we'll talk a little bit about later, also accenting Red's time here in Vincennes, especially through the 1920s. But you can see here his Clem Cadiddlehopper costume at the top. Red often said that character, who's kind of a country bumpkin guy, was based on a man he knew here in Vincennes named Mr. Carl Hopper. So we thought it was appropriate to include that in Vincent's exhibit. We have his honorary doctorate from Vincennes University with his cape. We have a photo of him at a parade here in 1963 when they dedicated a bridge that goes from Indiana to Illinois as the Red Skelton Bridge. Fire hat dedicated to him. Postcard when he was in a film, Whistling in the Dark, signed by many, many, many Vincennes residents. And a lot of people are curious about the sign at the bottom that says Bernard's. The story goes, when Red was in the 4th grade, his teacher asked for his middle name. And Red said, well, I don't have a middle name. And the teacher said, well, of course you have a middle name. And so Red said he came up with Bernard for his middle name because he saw that store sign downtown and he liked that name. So he chose that himself as his middle name. Well, we're not so sure about that because his birth certificate says Richard Bernard Skelton. So we're pretty sure his mom picked that name. But in any case, Red asked for the sign from this store when it closed, and he kept it all these years, and it came to us as part of the collection. So I think that's kind of a cool story about Red and his storytelling anyway.
So obviously, Red had a tendency of fabricating his story.
A little bit. He always said, if you want a good story, you ask me. If you want the truth, you better ask Edna. That was his first wife. Excellent. So anyway, that's the history of Red. But you'll see here behind me one of these statues. There are 14 of these in and around Vincennes, and they were purchased in 2006 by different companies, and various artists around town painted them, and many of them have different themes. One thing we do at the festival is we bring all the statues back and we gather them out in the front of the museum in a big circle. And so it's kind of a special thing for the festival that people don't normally get to see. And we're going to head into the museum now, but I just noticed that we do have some visitors who are coming in to see us. So we're going to kind of slide past there and on into the theater. Welcome. We're on a virtual tour with a group in New York.
No kidding. Fantastic. Hello, New York. Hello, New York.
Hey,
Good morning.
glad to see you. We're here in New York. Tell me, what brought you to the Red Skelton Museum?
Well, we were visiting Vincennes, and Red Skelton's just a favorite memory from growing up. So,
and where are you from? Where are you from?
We're from Lafayette, Indiana. It's a couple hours north of here.
And do you have any special memories of Red?
My favorite memory is Gertrude and Heathcliff. Gertrude and Heathcliff were flying along, and Heathcliff said, "Gertrude, I just made my first deposit on a new car."
You can't do Gertrude and Heathcliff without putting the thumbs under your armpit.
That's right. That's right. Well, hey, enjoy your tour.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
All right, so we are now heading through the museum store and on to the foyer area of the museum. And And the museum does go chronologically through Red's career. We start here again with a section about his time in Vincennes. The home I mentioned earlier is at the top of that panel. That was his birthplace. That's still standing here. This is little Red right here with his three brothers. Red's father actually passed away about 2 months before he was born. So his mother raised these four boys all on her own. And so he kind of struggled a little bit. You know, they didn't have much money. She took in washing to help, and all the kids kind of had to work. So this is a little bit about Red here. And then we're continuing on through a timeline. A lot of our guests love the timeline because it has so much great information about Red's life, beginning with his birth here in 1913, continuing on through his three marriages to Edna, who I mentioned earlier, who was his financial manager, helped with writing, and was also his partner on stage in the early days. Edna ultimately left Red. He says she left a note that says, "I'm leaving you, but I will still be your business manager," which she did, of course, continue to do for many years after they divorced. His second wife was Georgia Davis. Georgia was a showgirl actress, and both of his children were born with his wife, Georgia. Richard, let's see, here's little Richard down here when he was about 10, and then Valentina here as a baby. And then his third wife, Lothian, here in 1973. He married, and she is still living. She was about 25 years Red's junior, and she is still living.
You know, Anne, on the previous exhibit, can you hear me?
Sorry, what?
On the previous board, it said "son of a clown." Has that been debunked? Has that been debunked also?
It has. I mean, we think that Red always said that his father was a circus performer and that he was in the circus. However, when Mark did some extensive research to try to find out, because they said he was in the Hagenbeck Wallace circus and he traveled around, and we just couldn't coordinate when the Hagenbeck Wallace was here and when it wasn't. So it just doesn't seem like he necessarily traveled with the circus. But what we think is when the circus came to town, Red's dad likely volunteered at the circus and helped out with maybe raising the tents and maybe helped participate in that way. Or perhaps his mother, who was the seamstress, sewed costumes for the performers as they came to town. So we think that may have been Red's connection with the circus. And since he didn't know his dad, maybe that was his wish that his dad had been in the circus. But his dad actually ran a grocery store with his brother here in Vincennes, was his main job.
Yeah, he also said that the Freddie the Freeloader makeup was based on his father's makeup.
Right. Big storyteller, Red Skelton.
You're killing my entire lecture right now.
I know. We do that to a lot of people. Sorry.
Yeah. So we have to stories. Yeah, we have to revamp everything.
Right.
Well,
right.
You know, the film, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, you know, sometimes, you know, at the end, they say, when fact becomes legend, turn to legend. You know, it's
That's right.
Absolutely.
This section here is about Red's physical comedy and his start in vaudeville and with medicine shows. So we have some kind of silly steps here. The cool thing about the museum is it's very interactive. So we like to involve our guests being part of Red. So here's the steps to do Red's stagger walk. So there you go. And then we have silly faces here. If guests want to try to make a face like Red, there's a mirror here. Making everybody can do the fish face there with me. Or maybe a sad face. There we go. I'm not sure I could do the clown face. That's a good one. Red did that one often. So just continuing on here, we have these are some of the props from his physical comedy and his stand-up shows and the vaudeville that he did prior to being on the radio. So you can see he had one where it's throw the baby out with the bathwater, and of course the Guzzler's gin bottle. Not sure what happened with that extra arm, but I'm sure it was funny.
You know, maybe you and Mark might be able to help me on this. The Guzzler's gin routine for those that don't know, is almost a precursor to Lucy's Vita Vita Vegemin routine.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And we heard that they actually called and asked Red about that before she did her Vita Vita Vegemin routine, because she realized herself that it was very similar to the Guzzler's Gin with the advertising and the alcohol consumption during the commercial, I guess. And
they were both very close friends. They had made movies together and TV shows naturally.
Uh-huh. Right. They were in a couple movies together, I think. One movie, Mark.
Dewberry was a lady.
Right. I don't believe Lucy was ever a guest on Red's show.
Yeah. I have a clip of them doing a song and dance together.
Well, that was actually Lucy's show. Lucy went to our episode and she had like guest stars. So Red was one of the guest stars. This was when Lucy and Desi went to Alaska. And they bought a property in Alaska. So that was actually a Lucy show. But Lucy didn't appear on Red's TV show. And yeah, they knew each other when Lucy was a MGM player. She was under contract with MGM Movies.
And I think they were often lumped together, both being funny redheads. I think people sort of compared them.
And didn't the two of them have a relationship with Buster Keaton?
Maybe. It's hard to tell. I found many sources, and I think not. Buster Keaton definitely was with Red Skelton. He was a gag writer, but I've tried to read lots of Lucy's biographies, and I think only one mentions Buster Keaton, while the rest of them don't. And so it's just don't know if that's a legend or not, but it's possible because Buster Keaton was on the MGM lot during the time all three of them, were on the lot together.
Okay, but one last question. Yeah, one last question. Red made a movie called The Fuller Brush Man, and they wanted to do a sequel. He was unavailable because he was doing other movies, and they made The Fuller Brush Woman, and they put Lucy in that slot.
I forgot about that one, yeah. Right, yeah. Red did a cameo on that. So that's actually 3 films that they were seeing together. But yeah, that was Columbia Pictures, though, that they did that.
Right.
Okay. So back on tour. We are now in the radio section, which Red began in 1941. This is the 80th anniversary of when Red Skelton began his radio career. So at our little player here, you can play some of the Red Skelton radio shows. And then in our sound booth here, you're able to go in and play a radio show and then kind of enter your own sound effects, pushing the buttons that are in there. So that's another fun interactive thing. And there's some of the original sound effects and the sound effect tapes that Red used on the Red Skelton show.
Hey, Mark, can you go in there? Or are you going to lose your signal?
No, I just,
okay. Echoing. Let's hear a couple of your sounds.
All right, here goes the show. So it starts to play the radio show.
Oh, I think it's too soft. Can you hear it, Pop?
Yeah. No, we're not picking it up. Okay.
Okay.
We'll move out.
Radio killed live streaming.
Yeah.
A little bit more about the radio career. This is his junior character who was created on the radio in the 1940s. And his catchphrase, do y'all know his catchphrase?
Mm-hmm.
Junior, I did it. So during the 1940s with World War II, especially, that catchphrase really caught on. And especially like with the bombers, and whenever they would do something in the war effort to be successful, that would be the "we doed it." And many of the bomber planes actually had "I doed it" or "we doed it" painted on the airplanes. And we did an exhibit last summer that really focused on that catchphrase and Junior's character of the mean little kid. But he was introduced on radio. He did make many appearances on TV, as Red Skelton thought it was a little odd to be a grown man in a child's outfit. But he did kind of explain it by saying he had a super dose of vitamins during that time. So it means you pick this up and you hear the junior show on the radio with these telephones. Now, but since we have guests in the theater, we were going to cut back through the theater to the other side, but we're going to take a little slide through here. We'll just see how the internet holds up.
Yeah, the internet is starting to cut out at this point.
Yeah, but we could cut in the back.
Okay, so you're going to lose the voice now. We're going to head through the theater.
Hey, All in the Family.
Red's brand of wholesome comedy mixed with a strong people.
Okay, we're back.
So, Ann, Mark, why are you showing All in the Family?
What?
Why
Sorry,
are you
what?
showing All in the Family?
That's a little clip on the on our film that's in there. It's sort of a synopsis of Red's life, and the part of the film that you saw as we were walking through talks about the late 1960s, early 1970s when CBS made the decision to pull much of its rural programming, including the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Andy Griffith Show. And the Red Skelton Show was one of those that kind of got cut. Even though it was in the top 10 in the ratings, it got cut. And they were talking about the more urban programming that they were bringing onto television instead. And All in the Family, the Smothers Brothers, Sonny and Cher, that was some of the programming that CBS brought on to replace the rural Middle America cut comedy. So that's what that part of the film you were seeing. It's about a 10-minute show that begins, with Red's birth here and kind of continues on through his career. It's very, very touching and a great way for visitors to start their experience here at the museum.
When that CBS purge, as they called it, where they canceled every show and turned CBS into the Norman Lear network, from what I heard, read about it in Variety. That's how he found out that his show was being canceled.
I don't know about that. I doubt it, but who knows back then. I would imagine they would have had the courtesy to tell him, I hope. But it's hard to say. I know he was not very happy about it. And that was one of the reasons, among others, that he decided not to release his shows back out for the public. The other reason being that they were very topical shows, and he was afraid it wouldn't translate well in future years, because even when you think about the monologues with Johnny Carson or Saturday Night Live, when they do the opening sequence, they're all very topical about current events and things like that. Red Skelton's show, especially the monologue at the beginning, was very much like that. So that was one of the other reasons he felt like it wouldn't be good in syndication. Yeah. But now, of course, we wish that it would be. And Mark is remedying that by getting Red Skelton shows out on our YouTube channel every week. He posts on Tuesdays, of course, when the Red Skelton show aired. He posts a new Red Skelton show onto our YouTube channel. So in case any of your viewers want to check that out, they can. All right. So we're now in our character gallery, and I'm not sure how far back I can get here. But each of the characters, his main characters that we kind of saw outside in the lobby, have their own space here, and it has a fictional costume, fun facts about that character, as well as a panel that talks about the character, and then a TV that when you push the button plays sketches with Red Skelton only as that character. So you can see we have Cauliflower here. Back in this area, it's George Appleby and Clem Cadiddlehopper. And here's another fun interactive. If you've watched Red Skelton, you're going to know he loves to wear different hats. So this is another interactive people can play with to see Red's faces with different hats. And we even have a bucket of hats here that our guests can try on and be Red in the mirror, which is here. So lots of fun here at the museum.
And do you know if Red actually created these characters on his own? Did Edna help him, or were writers involved with the creation of the characters?
I believe that Red created most of these characters on his own, based on people that he had met or people that he knew. They were, for the most part, I think with the exception of Freddie, correct? They were all created for radio first. And then later transitioned to television and were kind of brought to life, so to speak, on television. But they started with Red and his different voices and funny accents, and the cadence of his speech changed for each of his characters. Because on radio, obviously, that was very necessary to differentiate between the characters.
We have a question. Is there a reason he portrayed drunks in particular? They were saying that was just something that stood out to them as a child. Playing a drunk character.
Oh, what about it now?
Was there any particular
He did
reason?
have the drunk character, Willie Lump Lump. That he had that character, I don't know. I just feel like at that time, it was funny to people. You know, probably now it'd be a little less politically correct, I'm sure, in today's culture. But just like many things that occurred in the early 1900s through the middle 50s and 60s, you know, there's things that we might not portray on a family-friendly show that they did back then. So.
It's true. Foster Brooks, who famously played a drunk character, learned very quickly that it was falling out of favor. I think the last movie that was in that vein was Arthur with Dudley Moore. You know, but you don't see that any longer.
Maybe that's how Chaplin got his start, right?
Yeah, Chaplin did too. You're right.
All right. Well, I have one story to share with you, and then Mark and I are going to trade places, and he is going to tell you a little bit about our new exhibit, When Red Was Richard, because Mark is obviously our curator and has done extensive research on Red's life and can give you lots of great info about this. But I want to share one story. I know you had a clip of the Pantheon Theater in your early bits of the show here. So the story Red used to tell, I know I mentioned earlier that Red was... the family was very poor and Red often worked. So one thing Red did to earn money is he sold newspapers out in front of the Pantheon Theater. So Red says one day he was out in front of the Pantheon selling his papers, and a very fancy dressed man came by and asked Red if he was going to go to the show that evening. And Red said, no, he needed to sell his papers. And anyway, he didn't really have enough money. So the man gave him $1, which in those days bought all the rest of his papers, and said if he came back that evening, there'd be a ticket for him. Well, Red said he was so excited, he ran home as fast as he could and told his mom. He said she even gave him a nickel for popcorn. So Red came back to the Pantheon that night, got his ticket, sure enough, and he said he was seated up there in the balcony, and the curtains opened, and he started nudging the person next to him. Hey, that's my friend, that's my friend. Well, the very fancy dressed man who had bought his papers was the star of the show, Ed Wynn. And Red says that at intermission, Ed invited him backstage. He says he held me up to those lead-weighted curtains. And when I peered out at that audience, I knew right then what I wanted to do was to make people laugh. So this is a story that Red has told over and over and over again. So obviously we want to find documentation of that. However, we couldn't really find that documentation that it was Ed Wynn. So we believe that it was someone, but maybe not necessarily Ed Wynn. But I'm going to trade places with Mark, and he's going to continue on here sharing When Red Was Richard with you.
Yeah. Exhibit of Red Skelton was born Richard Bernard Skelton, and this is the house they lived in, Lindale. And what we showing is newspaper front pages of the time in 1913, July 18th. And so it tells a little bit of his example of his uncle, Chris Ehart. And Ehart was in the liquor business and got in trouble with the law during Prohibition. And we have examples of Red's pictures of when he was a young child. And this is his mother, Ida Mae Fields. And so then we deal with, for a brief time, Red went to Indianapolis. And so he spent about his kindergarten years there. But then he came back to Vincennes. He got into magic. He saw a magician called Richard the Wizard. And he was interested in magic. He even bought a book, Lessons in Magic by Tibel. And we see little examples of his acting. He started performing in school plays in Harrison School. His grandmother was Ella Cochran, and Ella Cochran had a little sort of dirty a brothel. She had a sort of, and she lived in Washington City. It's about 30 minutes from here, and so he had Red Skelton had a skeleton in his closet. We have a newspaper article that President Harding came to town, and in the article it mentions that President Harding.
Mark, your sound is breaking up.
Yeah, just make sure you face us. There you go.
Okay. It says President Harding spied a small red-headed boy and waving at him, and President Harding said, "How you doing, Red?" And so, and this is what year was it? So 1922. So it's possible that Red Skelton could have been that red-headed boy. He's right there. That meant Harding. Red was into acting. We have a little stage depot here in town that stored luggage and had a little platform. And Red was known to perform on that platform. And it's still here in Vincennes.
Oh, I think we just lost them, Pop.
Okay, we'll give it a second.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting that all the books, all the articles, all the stories, all the movies, everything that we've learned about Red is being debunked right now.
Yeah, it's difficult because it seems like he's the author of these fairy tales.
Yeah. And in case anybody's interested, this is the book that they recommended to us last time we saw them. And I'm certain all these stories that right now are being debunked are inside this book as well.
Yeah, here, I just put it into the chat if anybody's interested in giving it a read. Yeah, but they're not the stories, although we're finding, the facts about these tales, they're not entirely useless. They shouldn't be discarded because they were conjured by Red himself. So it leads to some of the questions.
And
why?
in terms of Ed Wynn, I think the name I had heard, if it wasn't Ed Wynn, there was a famous vaudevillian at that time called Raymond Hitchcock. And they believe that it may have been Raymond Hitchcock. We have to ask them when they come back on if that was the person that they think he met. Wow. Although Red and Ed were friends for the rest of their lives. They did guest appearances all the time on each other's shows.
I could see that relationship. Eva puts it very nicely, saying that his tales were based on true events that he just embellished.
Yeah. And you know what? When you talk about it, when you think about it, that's what the PR groups would do. The publicity office in these movie studios will create these far-fetched stories about Joan Crawford or Shirley Temple or any of them, Clark Gable, and they would create this entire world. And as indicated, the rumors and they become the legends. They become the truth.
That's a great question. Karen just wrote in: is anybody writing a new, well-sourced book with these new findings?
Well, I think the books are going to have to be re-examined and rewritten. And maybe the museum is doing that right now. Well, we'll find out if they get back onto us.
Maybe that's something you should be doing.
Yeah. Is John?
Excuse me 1 sec. They're calling on the phone. Be right there.
And by the way, while everybody is still there and we're waiting for them to come back on again, if you know of any celebrity museums, if you know any in your area, drop us a line. Let us know. We want to try to get to as many celebrity museums as we can find. We have quite a few notifications out right now. We're waiting for more confirmations. Just yesterday, we got the Edward Hopper Museum. So that's going to be an exciting trip for us. Looks like Darren is online with them. No, the Edward Hopper Museum is not in Cape Cod. It's in New York. It's upstate New York, Westchester, I believe. I can get the actual. Hold on one second. Yeah, the Edward Hopper House. Where are we? Here we go. It's in Nyack. It's in 82 North Broadway, Nyack, New York. Is there one in Cape Cod as well? That's interesting. I know when I spoke with them yesterday, his studio was in Cape Cod. Oh, that should be interesting also. Ah, the Edison Labs. That would be interesting. I'm going to put that on my list. Go to the Thomas Edison house. That'd be great. Good questions out there. Yogi Berra Museum, a Yogi Berra Museum. Would folks be interested in sports figures? That's an interesting idea. Oh, now you're throwing too many at me. Here we go. I'm going to have to get out my pad. What is the Stickley Museum? What is the Stickley Museum? I have not heard of that one. Yogi Berra, Stickley. Interesting. Oh, Stickley Furniture. Okay. I had somebody ask me, they visited a fly fishing museum. Would you have an interest in a fly fishing museum? Does that sound like something you'd be interested in seeing? Fly fishing, yes or no? It's all we need.
We're back. All right. All right. Do you see us? We're back.
Oh, great.
Sorry, for some reason it was saying that our video had been disabled and we couldn't get it to undisable. So we are now back in action. So we'll kind of skip ahead a bit here because I know we're running tighter on time.
Okay.
Well, let's just talk about this wagon. How about it?
Well, this wagon was Red performed with the white WCA and also with the Boy Scouts. And Father Dahl of Old Cathedral was the head, the leader of that Boy Scout group. And they performed and they did a circus act. Mostly the Boy Scouts were dressed up as animals. They did like circus acts with animal acts. Red was a clown in it, and this wagon was being 1929. This wagon was preserved, and it was later in parades of 1963 when Red returned to Vincennes, and we have a community, a local historian, Norbert Brown, and he found parts of it in a warehouse, and he managed to restore it.
You know what, Mark?
And the little monkey is here. We understand.
Mark?
Skelton had a little monkey. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know what? You're breaking up so much. I want the people to enjoy what you're saying. Can you go into an area where your signal is good and we can discuss it better? Yeah.
Okay, we'll just head out to the foyer and maybe people will have questions for us, but just a few things on our way out here. This is an exhibit dedicated to Red Skelton's Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
And that's very popular with our visitors. And then our exit gallery here talks about Red's creative adventures, including his paintings, which he was such an avid painter all through his career, but especially during the 1980s, he began selling many of his paintings, and they went for quite a bit of money, like $50,000 to $60,000. He also was an author. You can see some of the books he wrote and illustrations, and a composer. He wrote many songs, mainly marches as well. So this whole area is about Red's creative genius, because many people think of him just as a comedian and don't recognize how many other things he did do. So we're going to be passing through the museum.
Yeah, I had a Gertrude and Heathcliff joke book that he illustrated, and he had jokes in it.
Sure. Yep. We sell that here in the museum store. So we had reproduction copies made of that original book that he did, and we sell those here in the gift store, and people can also get them online if they choose to.
So one of the questions that the people were asking is anybody going to undertake the challenge of rewriting the books to update all this information?
Okay, so what was your question?
The question is anybody going to rewrite the story of Red Skelton to put the true findings that you're uncovering right now? Are we going to get a more authoritative documentation of his life?
We hope, but the problem with biographies is when to stop. There's so many stories of Red Skelton that it's just putting together. There's a nice book about his television years, and there's one about his theatric and movie years. Really, some of his personal years. I had to go through a lot of research to find out about his war years, which has not been talked about, and also just briefly, some of his early life, like what the exhibit has, is sort of myth, and it's not documented. It's really hard to, and his stage life after his artwork is still a little bit of mystery to me. I know, he's done lots of shows in Reno, and when he was painting, he traveled around the country doing artwork.
Hey, Mark, what did he do specifically during the war years?
Well, his main job was to entertain the troops going from Italy, from America to Italy. He was on the USS United States, and that was converted into a troop ship, and it became the West Point, and during the war. And so what he did was, I'm sorry.
Was he part of the Hollywood Canteen?
No, he was actually enlisted. He got drafted. He divorced Edna, and that raised up his draft number. And he didn't have any dependents after he was divorced from Edna, and so he got drafted. And he was called into the Army. And originally he went to the artillery. He was in Camp Roberts, California. That's where he took his training. And later they found out that he was best served for special services. So he got the schooling in William and Mary in Virginia. And so he got shipped out with the troop ships. And and when he was doing that, he was on no schedule. It's either when an officer calls him up to perform, you perform. And he just got exhausted. He had a nervous breakdown because he was performing so much. So he got a medical discharge, and he recuperated for about 3 months until the end of the war in Virginia, in Camp Pickett, Virginia.
Excellent.
And so, but Yeah, but
You
even
are
before that,
Mark, you're a wealth of information.
yeah.
He really is.
Yeah.
He really is.
But even before that, he did the fundraising. He had an I Do It plan where people sacrificed a portion of their the salary to pay for the help the troops. So I do it. I sacrificed my money to help the troops, and he did tours around Texas and Oklahoma. He was very patriotic. He did a thing at the Kaiser plant and where they made the ships. So he was involved with the war even before he got drafted.
So one last. Oh, did we lose him? Oh, golly.
Oh, goodness. As you were about to say, one last question.
Yes.
We'll see. We'll see. I know before we signed on, they were talking about getting new boosters for their Wi-Fi, and they certainly can use them.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're back.
they're back. Okay. We've taken up a lot of your valuable time. We have one last question for you.
Okay.
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
Do you think it would resonate in today's audiences as well as it did when he came out with that?
It's hard to tell. Let me get somewhere more quieter. I'm not involved with schools anymore, so I don't know what kids are, how they're teaching the patriotic system now. A lot of people think that's not being taught in school, so I don't. But I understand currently now it's an option for kids to do it. It's not mandatory. But people think they don't even do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. Here locally, there's in Terre Haute. They broadcast kids say the Pledge of Allegiance on their TV show. They go to each different schools and kids are saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So,
yeah, it's a different world.
So,
yeah.
But people, and sometimes I'm hearing people saying the Pledge of Allegiance, the Red Skelton's Pledge of Allegiance, and they're saying it casually. So they're not. Sometimes you have to listen to each word and put emphasis, but some people are just reading it. And
if people out there, if you have not seen it, it is on YouTube. It's on my YouTube page. Go see Red Skelton's interpretation of the Pledge of Allegiance. It's a classic. Are there any more people in your lobby over there, Mark?
Yeah, we're getting. Well, our tour group has come in, so that's
okay.
Mark, I was just curious, what kind of performances do you do at the Performing Arts Center?
Well, covert things died down, but we have a national touring group that do Shakespeare plays, and sometimes even like a variation of a Shakespeare play that like modernized it. So they don't do it traditionally. But we have performers. So we've had country singers, comedians, and but as the museum, we have our imitator Brian Hoffman. He's his home theaters in Pigeon Forge, and he's been approved by Lothian Skelton to perform Red Skelton. And so sometimes, actually this year we're going to be doing a special performance of Rolling Stones and the Beatles, little competition things. The tribute bands are going to compete, Rolling Stones, Beatles. And Red Skelton has a connection to Rolling Stones. He was the first person to broadcast the Rolling Stones to American audience. So that's a kind of interesting thing. We have also, we do a Nutcracker ballet every other year. And so we use the theater now and then, thanks to the BU people.
Okay. Well, I think we should show their website and everything, Darren.
Yep, I'll pull all that up now. Mark, thank you so much.
Yes,
you're
Mark.
welcome. And these are examples of the reproduction paintings that we sell, and they're signed by Lothian too. So,
I'm sorry, Loomey. 803-7-6.
All right, let me show that here. So the website is redskeltonmuseum.org, but you can also follow them on
South Advanced,
Skelton Museum.
which is what we have here.
They also have their own YouTube channel, Red Skelton Museum. You can follow it right there, and you can see those videos that Ann had mentioned every week. They're out.
Okay, we're getting interference.
Yep, I got. There we go. This is the book that Sal mentioned earlier, Red Skelton, The Mask Behind the Mask. You can pick that up from Amazon. And you can follow Sal on Instagram, on Twitter. There's a great clip right here if you haven't seen it. Just a fantastic clip from Stormy Weather, 1943 with Cab Calloway. Really a lot of fun.
And the Nicholas Brothers. Yes.
And the Nicholas Brothers, yes. Also follow Sal over on Facebook. And this is the playlist that we were talking about, Sal St. George on YouTube. And here are some of his highlights, some of his favorite clips from Red. And that'll be in the chat as well. You can click that or just search YouTube for Sal St. George and it'll pop up. Lastly, head over to Sal St. George.
Just for those, if you noticed, that was Jamie Farr. That was in, there he is. He worked for Red. He did all the sound effects when he was a young man. That's long before he did MASH and became Klinger. But you can watch what he has to say about Red right there. And terrific stories that he has about Red Skelton.
SalSt.George.com. You can sign up for all of Sal's programs. Next week, to celebrate Independence Day, we're talking about the Yankee Doodle Dandy, the making of. That is revisiting this with new information for you. So
you know what they said is absolutely correct. Even lectures that I've done a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, new material comes up all the time, and I try to incorporate it as quickly as I can. The making of Yankee Doodle Dandy is a great example of that. I had to revamp a lot of the information that I found. So come on back and learn the story of how James Cagney and his brother made Yankee Doodle Dandy.
And then if we continue in the month, we have virtual road trip to the Ginger Rogers Museum over in Independence, Missouri, as well as the Denver, Colorado. We're going to see the Molly Brown House, Unsinkable Molly Brown. I'm looking forward to that as well. Well, Mark, Ann, thank you so much again today for showing us around such a beautiful museum. I look forward to the day we get to see it in person. Right, Pop?
Absolutely. Oh, they're back up again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ann. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you again. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day.